Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Data Insights podcast. I'm Arya, founder of Datawise. Datawise is an AI copilot designed to supercharge data intelligence. We are helping data teams cut asset discovery time by 90%. Today, I'm excited to welcome Anubhav Reddy, a senior data scientist. Anubhav brings in a deep understanding of the evolving data landscape with hands on experience in building predictive models, scaling machine learning systems, and driving data driven decision making across marketing and operations teams. Throughout his career, he has been passionate about bridging the gap between technical teams and business leaders, ensuring data science delivers real, tangible impact. Anubhav, welcome to the show.
Hey, Arya. Thank you so much for having me here. It's exciting to be on the show and to talk about all the exciting stuff that's going on.
Awesome. Great, great. So, Anubhav, can you walk us through your career journey into data science? What inspired you to pursue this field and what milestones have been particularly pivotal for you?
So, absolutely. So, I think my first tries with data as something that we have to look at started after my master's in business administration. I did my master's in supply chain management, and then I started working for a company that consulted for supply chain projects and for a lot of customers across the world. So the main business was we look at the data, we look at what data is telling about their business, and make recommendations on what should be changing in their supply chain planning, forecasting, management of inventory, and all that stuff. And what I found was that data was a very powerful thing. Like we could look at the data and make a lot of make a lot of decisions based on the insights it shared with us and have a very meaningful impact on the company. And what was also interesting is that apart from having a business knowledge, whatever we learned from that particular projects or whatever that particular objectives, we could easily translate to other businesses or other industries. And that's where I started asking the question, hey, what can we do more with the data? What is out there? What is the industry doing with the data? And then I came across this new and emerging field. I mean, it was new for me. It probably already existed. I don't know. But I found it for the first time. Like there's something called data science, where you do experiments with the data, you run tests, you figure out what's working, what's not working. There were this cool algorithms which help machines learn about the data, which I did not understand at all when I read about it for the first time. So the more curious I became, I started pursuing it more and more. And then finally, I did my second master's with a major in data science and business analytics. And eventually, I started my career as a data scientist.
Awesome. Great. So, Anubhav, across your experience, what are some recurring data challenges you have seen organizations struggle with, whether, like, let's say, data discovery, governance, collaboration, or anything else?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think all three things that you mentioned, I've observed them in some form or the other in different organizations. Not all three the same, but in different organizations, I think one or the other challenge. I think data discovery has always been a challenge for somebody who is joining an organization for the first time, or there's a new team that moves to a new vertical of the organization, because a lot of times projects get so complex, the applications, the data assets, they become so huge, so complex that except for the people who actually created them, nobody really knows where the data is flowing from, what it really means. And every time you have to work with a new data set, it involves a long list of checks and meetings with people who created that to understand what that data is actually about. So yeah, that is definitely there. In terms of collaboration, I think I have the opportunity to work with a healthcare focused startup in US. And our challenge was compliance with HIPAA laws, complying with governance when we share data from hospitals to do a little bit of research to find how ML algorithms can help with patient care. And there was this huge roadblock as to what data can be shared securely with all the compliances is in place and removal of all the PII data. Even though all the standards are written and you know what to do, doing them manually and making sure that those things do not, end of the day, the data share complies with all those regulations is a very hefty task. And that was itself a very interesting project. Like from the moment you start a conversation, it takes about a month, 2 or 3 months for you to even get the data after all the scrubbing and everything has been, compliant. Yeah, to the like to cut it to make it more specific. Yes, all these things have been a challenge that I've observed in different organizations, and it would be nice if there was a good solution to address all three of them.
Okay. Okay, great. So like in your view then, like what factors make a data asset truly trustworthy for users across technical and business teams? How can, like organizations foster more trust without slowing down?
So, in my experience, what I've seen is when we have, as a consumer of data, like, as a data analyst or a data scientist, as a consumer of a certain data set, if I have access to only one data set, then there's usually a bit of a trust. Okay, there's the only table, there's the only database that I can access, which talks about how the organization is doing or about whatever objective I'm trying to build towards it. When there is another data set that is being used by a different team, but it's a slightly modified version of the same data set, and then the confusion starts. Like, which data set do we trust? And then you have layers and layers of data sets. You suddenly discover, okay, there is another data set that is on top of this data set, which has things coming in real time. And then the other teams are doing certain changes and modifications to the data, filtering it out, cleaning it up, and putting it in a table. Then the question arises, so how is that whole process happening? So as long as there is one data set that is used by multiple teams, a single source of truth to say, I think it's highly trustworthy. The moment every team has its own customized version of the data set, which essentially is the same thing but says different stuff to different team, it causes a lot of confusion because then you have to align across teams for larger projects which impact multiple teams.
Great, great. And so, like, like data scientists often spend a lot of time finding, and, like we talked about data discovery, finding the right data assets or, kind of understanding the existing assets, right? Like you said, like if there is someone that is joining the new team, like a newcomer that's joining the team. So, how big of a pain point has this been in your work, and what would be an ideal solution look like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been like across all the companies that I've like all the organizations I've worked with and all the different projects that I've done like outside on my own. Understanding the data and understanding where it comes from and what it says has always been the biggest, in my mind, it has always been the biggest part of the whole task. And the most important part of the whole thing, because if we get that understanding incorrect, then the whole downstream process of building a solution may or may not work as expected. For example, a very small thing. I think I was once working with a company on a consulting project, and the idea was like we would take their data and we would create certain machine learning models which would learn from certain medical data. And there's a lot of missing data. Now we don't know, and this data comes from very different sources. Like everybody from different countries is putting data in, like is putting information into the single database in a given format, but everybody's doing it a little differently. So when there is a missing value, I don't know if it's actually missing or in their mind it has a certain meaning. Like, okay, it is not, it is within certain expected boundaries, so we don't really have to mention it. So all those things make your whole process of analyzing, looking at the data and solutions very, very difficult. So if you have a clean lineage, you know how each asset is being created, we understand what does each, let us say that you have 10 columns and there are different values in it along with missing values, like what does each one of them mean? It makes your ramp up time, I think, so much shorter. Instead of getting into 100 meetings with 100 different people to understand why and what and from where it's coming, and if there, it's all enforced and standardized, and there is a data dictionary or a tool that tells you what these things mean, where do they come from, I think it cut down your ramp up time by a lot.
I see. Got it. So, I know we had a chance to view, and I had a chance to display some of the demo of Datawise to you previously. So, what is your first impression of Datawise? Were there any parts of the product that immediately stood out as, especially valuable or differentiated?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that there were many interesting features that you showed in the demo, and I found it to be very, very, what is the intriguing to try and test it out for sure on my own. But what I found on top of, in like on the first go, like my first thought in my mind was, hey, this it would have been cool if I had something like this when I was joining an organization or when I'm trying to do all these independent projects, like something where I could just query, look at a table and it tells me what does these things mean, where does these things come from, how do these things work together, how the tables connected. A lot of times that whole discovery process, I think data-wise is the features that you showed me, they would really, really help me cut down time on that whole discovery and understanding process of the data.
Great. Thanks for that feedback. And like one major feature that we have is Wise AI that helps users to ask questions about their data in natural language and get actionable answers. From your perspective, how important is it for data platforms to become more conversational and user friendly for non-technical teams?
I think it's already happening, right? If any product is not doing it, probably they would be left behind in terms of the capabilities that they offer. A lot of tools are definitely getting on this trend with like smart AI agents that are able to understand the whole natural query and convert it into whatever you need, right? And extract that information. We are seeing this happen with like model context protocol, where you can actually say, hey, if there's this kind of query, then there's a specific data asset that you can take into consideration to answer and give a feedback, right? This is already happening, and it's a good thing that Datawise is actually building that as a core capability. And a lot of times you don't want to sit down and just rinse and repeat the same query, just copy paste a different table and say, oh yeah, what's happening in this table versus that table and stuff. Natural language definitely speeds up the process. It's just a question of how clearly are we able to communicate to the system and how well it's able to understand what we are asking. I think those things need to be both involved as part of training and both as like to become better in technology. But I think that's definitely a good part of the future that's going to come.
Okay, awesome. Great. So, many companies struggle to maintain up-to-date metadata. How critical is continuous automated metadata enrichment in solving data chaos problem that you see nowadays, right? And how do you think platform like Datawise can help here?
Yeah. I have my understanding in this area is probably very, very limited because I have only worked as a consumer of the data. As a data scientist, we mostly consume and the data lakes that have been built and have been provided to us. But I do see a lot of times, even in my own flows, right? I would have processed a tons and tons of data, and then probably we moved on to a different project, and that data is just sitting there. It's just sitting there unused, incurring costs. No, we forgot about it, or it's just like probably there was some additional thing we had to do on that project and got paused indefinitely for whatever reason, and the whole thing's just sitting there. It would have been awesome if there was a tool that would tell you, hey, you created these data sets 6 months ago. Nobody has queried this data. It hasn't been touched. Do you want to do something about it? I think that would save so much cost that is incurred from a infrastructure perspective. I mean, obviously, it depends on the company, right? If some companies are using hundreds of GPUs, then all of this is like peanuts to them based on what they incur in processing. But for most companies, there's just a lot of unused data that is just sitting there and incurring costs, or you're just upgrading hardware on hardware because your local servers are already getting full with unused data, which nobody knows. Like, are we using it? Are we not using it? Is it intended to be used later? So it would be good to have something that tells you, hey, take a second look at this old data.
Hmm. Right. Great. Thanks for that insight. So, how do you see AI reshaping the traditional roles of data governance, quality, and cataloging in the next few years?
Data governance, I think it thinks AIs have become pretty smart. Like a lot of agents are like really, really smart. There is no question in my mind that we'll soon have AIs that are hyper focused on specific roles like cybersecurity, governance, cataloging. It would be, I think there's a in short time there'll be things like AIs that's just sit on top of your whole database in IT. They don't have access to the inline data, but they definitely have access to the metadata, and they're able to tell you with governance from a governance perspective, hey, are you this compliant? Are you able to, these are your PIIs, are you scrubbing them when you're moving them out of certain predefined schemas and databases into a different place? They're able to periodically check certain samples to say, hey, this looks to be a PII, but it's not encrypted. Just be careful when you're sharing this data with certain teams. So I think they will become, as you rightly said in the very beginning, we are definitely going to see a lot of AI co-piloting for all different users. There will always be an assistant or a second brain that working with you, catching all the things that might be falling out between the cracks and stuff. And cataloging is also very interesting, right? A lot of times when we are discovering data assets, it takes quite a bit of time to go, especially if you have not been in a company for that long. If you did not see the whole system evolve yourself, you're somebody new to the company, 6 months, 1 year, to discover new things and go and find out, it takes a ton of time. It takes a lot of information, a lot of sit downs with different people who may or may not even have time to talk to you, given how busy they are, to understand, hey, what is this particular table really do? I want specific information. Where do I go and get it correctly? Right. And if there is a tool like, as we saw in the demo database, if I could just query and say, hey, I want XYZ table that basically had these orders, or it has like emails that we sent out or something else, right? We could easily just go there and say, hey, I found this table, this is interesting. Then I have very specific questions to the person, and it cuts down on the time spent on communication and reach outs.
Right.
And nobody wants to explain the same thing to all the 100 people who join the company, right? Again and again and again and again, right? You want something that is intelligent and there as part of onboarding. Like even as a part of onboarding, it will be very interesting. Tell me, hey, this is the tool asset. These are the data assets that you'll be working with. Go and discover using this wonderful tool. It's part of your onboarding process. That immediately cuts down the amount of time you need for a new hire to ramp up. In my mind, like there'll be other things, but I feel that way.
Awesome. Thanks for those insights. So one more thing that we are passionate about at Datawise is kind of promoting a strong data culture, right? So beyond tools, culture is often the bigger hurdle, right? So what have you seen as key elements of building a strong, sustainable data culture across companies?
Okay. I'm probably new to the whole data culture thing. Maybe it's just something that's happening around me and I didn't even realize I was part of it. But I'll just try to answer this from my own perspective. As we were discussing, a lot of times you have data assets which are available, but people then keep recreating and recreating stuff which already exists in somewhere, but it's hidden. People don't know it. There is a lot of times everybody has a different take on how something should be calculated or something should be viewed, and then that creates different sources of truth within the company. And then I'm sure that there'll be a lot of specific ways of doing things from a data engineers and people who manage the databases from their perspective. In my view, like as long as you have a clear and a very reliable source of data to work with, and everybody is using the same database or the same data lake to do their reporting, to do their analysis, to develop their applications and all that stuff. I think it builds a strong data culture because you spend more time developing, more time taking and judging the benefit of your applications than trying to reconcile and figure out, oh, what am I using the right source of truth? Oh, why does my calculation from this data source says this, but your data source says something different? And it happens all the time with the companies, right? A financial team uses a different data source to compile year-end metrics, and then the other teams which are responsible, let us say marketing, they compile a different set of data, and then they don't reconcile at the end of the year. So this creates a huge, I think, mismatch between, and then uh, a lot of times you would be putting something in front of the senior leadership, which comes from financial team, and then they'll question like, "Oh, you probably asked for 10% growth. Why does the financial team say only 9% growth?" So I think as long as we have a single source of truth, that entire organization refers to, hey, this is the data that we should be looking at. This is what everybody works off. That itself creates a strong, reliable foundation for us to build accurate systems of measurement or applications of governance and all that.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So, when adopting a new data platform like Datawise, what advice would you give to teams to maximize adoption and success from both technical and business users standpoint?
Okay, advice to teams. I think it's just about. I think it's similar to any new tool that the team is going to start using, right? Does it really address their pain points? How important those pain points are, and clearly validating the tool with different stakeholders. Does this tool work for you? What do you really want from this tool that you currently cannot do? Maybe it can help you save time by doing it in a more automated and a more frequent fashion. So there has to be an alignment across different teams. A lot of times something like this happens, right? We move to a tool for cost saving purposes, and then the rest of the teams are like, okay, it doesn't have XYZ, it doesn't do what it does, and it takes you almost the same amount of money in terms of human hours or man hours to build those features which existing in a previous tool. So those things have to be avoided. I think there has to be an alignment between all the different users who are going to use it.
I see. Okay. Thanks for that feedback. And so, as tooling evolves, what skills do you think are, do you believe will differentiate the best data scientists and data practitioners going forward in the coming few years?
I think so. Obviously, understanding of the business, understanding of what is needed, and how does a solution or whatever solution that we are working on, we are part of or we are developing, is going to help with the business objectives is the key. But with the evolving landscape, I think the question more, and I think most of the organizations, most data scientists do this, like after certain years, they're always aligning themselves with, hey, what is the objective of the organization? How does my project line up with that objective, right? That is a key thing. Everybody is working towards the same goal in an organization. But I think the key is how fast can we achieve that, right? Like we have seen like through our own careers, like when we first started out probably 10, 15 years ago, and compared to today, things have sped up a lot from compute to the way auto completions to your queries to the way Tableau and all these things help us quickly update the reports and all that. From the eras of where you would get a standard report from some reporting server once in a month to look at and take decisions. Now you have access to data analysis and everything that you want to look at a tap, right? You can just go in and you refresh and you get today's what is happening today live. So things have become really fast. What's going to change is the changes that are coming to AI and all the features that we are building into these tools. How fast can we get to the next step?
Hmm. Right.
Cut down the whole development time. Instead of spending a month to develop a report or a week or 2 months to develop a data ML solution, how can we bring it down to like 15 days, 2 weeks, 1 week, while keeping all the guardrails and objectives and safeguards in place?
Hmm. Awesome.
So that's, I think that is going to be a big question, I think, going forward.
Great, great. Thanks for those insights. And then finally, how do you personally stay updated and keep learning in a field that's evolving so quickly? Are there any resources, books, podcasts that you follow?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of people from ML community on LinkedIn that there's always new research papers that are coming out. I honestly do not get enough time to go through the full research paper, but I do look at their gist, their summaries, what's happening new. It's just that the landscape is evolving so quickly. It is very, very hard to stay on top of things all the time, unless you're only like you're in the research field only, right? Unless you're a researcher, that's all that you're focused on doing the greatest and the latest out there. It's very hard for somebody to stay on top of it. I think what we focus mostly on is every time there's a new challenge in the organization, it is good to take a bit of a lead time and just do a little bit of research out there. Hey, what is the latest tooling or what is the latest process that's out there? And this has become very easy with all the new, AIs at our disposal, like ChatGPT, Deep Research, Gemini Deep Research, Perplexity, and all these cool tools that are out there. It has become faster for us to do research and see what is out there, what is that's happening that can line up with the solution that I'm looking for. And I usually use these tools to find out is there a solution that I need that's latest, and then go explore it at the original source to see what was done, how is it done, how can I actually use that solution in my place of work. It doesn't always work out, but it's good to keep up with stuff that's happening.
Okay. Okay. Awesome, Anubhav. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your insights and thoughtful feedback. We are excited to keep building a future where data teams can move faster, collaborate better, and trust their assets more with platforms like Datawise at its core. To our listeners, if you're curious to learn more about how we are reimagining the data discovery and intelligence experience, check out the links in the description. Awesome. Thanks so much, Anubhav.
Thank you, Aya. It was a pleasure meeting you and being having this interesting conversation with you. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Yes. Bye.